Hi, I'm Mary Kopczynski, the CEO of RegAlytics, back home from Japan, completely jet lagged, but here with your update on this week's 34,225 alerts. The regulator of the week is Utah, with a whopping 297 passed bills in the last week. Lots of interesting topics covered, and I do love Utah because it's a swing state, and you can see it very clearly in the bills they pass that some would be considered bleeding heart liberal, like the provision of food security, which allows free breakfast and lunch to eligible students based on household income. There's also a new law to ensure students have a reasonable expectation of personal modesty in schools and prohibits any expectations for students to undress in the presence of others. But then there were some past rules that sounded very similar to some of the executive orders coming from the Trump administration, or at least are focused on advancing the same areas. For example, Utah passed a rule creating a spaceport exploration committee to ascertain if a space launching center could be created in the state. They also passed a bill allowing the state to appropriate $11 million to assist in the mining of critical minerals in Utah. Utah is such a great microcosm of all of the United States because they're really doing what almost all the states are doing. So they're passing rules on pharmacy benefit managers that are no longer controlled federally. They're passing data privacy, consumer protection rules since there's no federal view on it. They're passing their own rules on the use of artificial intelligence in mental health chatbots, consumer protection, and deepfakes. They've passed a new rule on foreigners and whether or not they're allowed to own guns in Utah, and the answer is no. Non-citizens with pending cases for asylum or whatnot are considered restricted persons. But then there are ways that Utah is cutting edge. For example, they passed a law defining ritual abuse, which is basically a crime committed under the auspices of some sort of religion or ritualistic practice. It's providing officer training to help the officers better understand the difference between victims and repeated trauma to be distinguished from participants with consent. One last note. Utah did revise its rules on felons, and they can't be jurors unless their record has been expunged or at least 10 years have passed. So currently, our president is not qualified to serve on a jury in Utah. The topic of the week is crypto and the total about face by the federal government. So the FDIC has now clarified the process for banks to engage in crypto-related activities. The SEC announced the dismissal of civil enforcement actions on both Kraken and Coinbase. And also, the CFTC staff withdrew their earlier advisory on risks related to clearing digital assets. And of course, the president put out an executive order on modernizing federal payment systems by phasing out paper-based payments such as checks and money orders by September 30th, 2025. And I find it amazing that this can all happen so quickly. What else do you need to know? Well, on March 28th, 2025, an executive order was issued to enhance the safety and beauty of Washington, D.C., emphasizing its role as the nation's capital. The initiative aims to create clean, safe public spaces for residents and visitors while preserving American heritage and monuments. And this is all in anticipation of a very important upcoming milestone, which the Trump administration has pointed out repeatedly in executive orders. March 23rd, for example, Trump commemorated the 250th anniversary of Patrick Henry's famous speech that moved the Americans to secede from England. And in that speech, he said the famous line, "Give me liberty or give me death." So 4th of July, 2026 is going to celebrate 250 years of American independence from monarchy. And that's it this week for RegAlytics. We have the global supply chain of the world's regulatory alerts in one very easy to use place. If you need a solution to anything related to regulation, give us a call.